What's going on, guys? Drawing Chaos here with another Satisfactory video. Hooray! Welcome to Fix It. I'm Bob, and today I'll be your... Get on with it! I'm screwed. So today's video is kind of an interesting one. It's mostly for those people that like to actually learn about things for the game. It's not really a tips or tricks or anything like that, but it does have some useful information, you know, in case you're wondering about stuff like power, especially with the new update coming out and all that good stuff. You might want to actually know about this stuff as you're going on. So let us begin. I find this stuff to be very interesting, but some people may not. So we're going to start off with the wonderful Biomass Burner. This is going to be the first thing that you ever get to build in terms of power. They make about 30 megawatts of power, and I pulled the 4 major things that everybody uses to burn them. So you'll have the leaves, you'll have wood, you'll have biomass, and then you'll have solid biofuel. So if you check this out, so what I wanted to do was 1,000 megawatts of power. That's about enough power to get you through the early game, pretty much no matter what. So if you have 1,000 megawatts of power, which is about 34 biomass burners, that'll last you pretty much the solid thing right before you get into coal and everything. So the way that I set this up was I was trying to figure out how much it would take to get 1,000 megawatts of power per minute. So in terms of leaves, I would need 4,000 leaves per minute just to get 1,000 megawatts of power per minute. That's how bad leaves are. Throwing those in there, oh, that is just such a waste. Whereas if you switch over to wood, 606 wood just to make 1,000 megawatts of power. Then I wanted to figure out something. So if I take all those leaves or woods, if I basically condense them down, I would be ending up with the same amount of biomass burners, all right, about 1,000 megawatts of power, but I will also be consuming 22.22, which is about 6 constructors turning the leaves into biomass. And I thought this was really interesting. So I may be making 1,000 megawatts of power, but I'm losing about 23, you know, but I'm also going from 4,000 down to 600 with only 22.22 power used. That's kind of insane to think about. The same thing with wood. So I went from 600 down to 66. So that 600 could last me for 10 whole minutes, whereas like before that would only last me a minute. And I'm only using 4.44, which is insane. Now, there is one where you can actually use mycelia to make biomass, which is also a thing, but I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, 300 is a lot. But then again, the alien carcasses and the alien organs, if I had 2 alien organs, that would last me for 1 whole minute, making 1,000 megawatts of power. And the alien carcasses, I would only need about 4 of them. Carpes, carpe diem. Like this stuff, it's really interesting. But then the other question is, what happens if I go to solid biofuel? Look at this. So now I need 533 leaves to make me 1,000 megawatts of power. I'm up to 26.67. Now let's compare that to the original one that we went over to here. Originally went from 4,000. Now we're down to 666. Then we scroll down, now we're up to 533. So we're using about the same. Wait, what? So we're using about 100 less, a little bit more power, but now we got to do more constructors. Because now we're turning the constructors from biomass into solid biofuel. Interesting. This is why I turned them all to the same power so we can kind of see that. So as you can see, now we're only using 500, and then that is, that is interesting. So turning the leaves into biomass, and then turning that into, wow. Now, granted, the time that you're going to save in putting solid biofuel compared to actually biomass in there is also a factor that you got to consider. So you do save, but not the huge gap that we saw before. Like, here's wood. All right, so wood is about 53. All right, so 53 wood per minute to make that last. And if we go back up to the top, so we start at 600 wood. Then we went to 66. Now we're all the way down to 53. That's kind of interesting. Mycelia, still completely useless. Although alien organs, look at this. If we had 1.33, that would last us a minute, making 1,000 megawatts of power. So with that one being done, the next up is our lovely coal one. Now this is really interesting, as coal really makes us utilize water pipes and whatnot. So the three things that we use for coal are going to be regular coal. Duh. We're also going to use compact coal. And to top it all off, whoop, there is Petroleum Coke. So we got Coca-Cola in here. Each one uses water. Each one's a pain in the butt. But let's go look over at the spreadsheet. Oh my god. So check this out. So now 10,000. All right. That's going to get us 50,000 megawatts of power. Now I feel like 50,000 will last you a solid way before you get into fuel. There's nothing more than 50,000 that you're gonna need. So that's why I picked this number, but otherwise you can change it however you want. But check this out. If I had 10,000 coal, which is a lot. Oh my god, that's crazy amount. But if I had 10,000 coal, that would get me 50,000 megawatts of power, but I'd also be using about 5,500 megawatts of power, so I'd only get about 3,500, I think it is. No wait, 45, about 44,000. So I'd only get about 44. So you can see you're actually, once you get into these, you start losing it. I need like 30,000 megawatts, or not 30,000, I need 30,000 cubic meters of water just to make this work. Now, as you can see, using coal in this aspect where you want to make it like go extreme with like coal generators is a huge waste. All right, as soon as you get into fuel, fuel's probably the way to go, but it's awesome to see that like it would take so much just to make this work. Also, I figured this out. Did you know that the Miner Mark 1, Mark 2, and Mark 3, even if you check the production rate, it consumes more power the higher one you choose, even though the production rate is not as strong. So take a look at this. So the Miner Mark 3, which is producing 480, so the Miner Mark 3, which is producing 480, compare that to the Miner Mark 1, which is producing 120. Like, we jumped from 400 all the way up to 600 megawatts of power being consumed. And yes, we're using a lot less miners, but they use way more power per miner. So you're actually using more power per item that you're actually digging up. But at that point, it's a minor difference, and it's not really going to end. You know, it's not going to matter in the long run. I mean, look at this. It's just not going to matter. Now, if we switch over to compact coal, this is actually quite interesting. So for the regular coal, we're using about 10,000 coal. This one, we're down to about 4,761 compact coal. Now, if you want to compare that, compact coal is just like 25, 25 to make 25. So we're using 25 coal and 25 sulfur to make 25 compact coal. So it's evenly amounted. So this 4,000 right here is just basically dividing up between coal and sulfur to make the same thing. But here's an interesting part. Look how much power we consume making the same amount of stuff. So making the same amount of power, we're actually consuming more power because now we gotta basically put this stuff into the assembler, and we're doubling our miners. But here's the real thing. We're going from 10,000, we're only saving about 500 pieces. So 500 total, and we're just dividing up between two things. So really, it doesn't even save us anything. It actually uses more power. So we're losing power on this. So compact coal, no matter which way you look at it, is completely useless as a burning option. Now, granted, there's way more things we could use compact coal later on, But that's insane to think about. And now, trust me, I did the minor Mark 1, Mark 2, and Mark 3 just to show off exactly, you know, the difference, but it's not really that thing. Lastly, we come over to the Patrilium Coke, which is going to make us 50,000 megawatts of power, but use 14,000 megawatts of power just to do. Now, why, you ask? Well, that's because we actually have to turn crude oil into heavy oil residue, and heavy oil residue into petroleum coke. Now, this is great as a byproduct. So that would mean 5,000 oil just to make this, just to make 50,000. Yeah, at this point, it's not even close to work, you know, using it. But the nice thing about it is, if you're making petroleum coke and you need a lot of it, or you have a lot of it, like X or whatever, like you have a lot of excess heavy oil residue, you can make petroleum coke and then just, you know, power some generators. But for the most part, as it running your factory, hell no. Hell no. Now on to the late game items. We have 3 wonderful fuel generators. Now the lovely thing about fuel generators is we got fuel, which is the main burning resource. Then we got liquid biofuel, one of the things that most people don't use, and then the coup de grace, which ends up being turbo fuel. Out of all 3 of these, I think turbo fuel is used the most, but most people start off with the fuel. But let's check the spreadsheet and see what we got going on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you ready to be blown away by fuel? So I decided that 100,000 megawatts of power, this will get you through the rest of the game. No problem, everything easy peasy. Now, in terms of fuel, it's just basically crude oil into fuel, and that's pretty much it. Now, if we made 100,000 megawatts of power, that would mean we need 15,000 oil. Oh my god, 15,000 oil to make 100,000 megawatts of power, and that would still use about 12,500 megawatts of power in basically the extractors as well as the refinery. And I use a pure extractor, by the way, which is 120, and sure, you can up that just to get the other ones, but like still it's just like, if you had a bunch of these, you still need 125 miners. I don't even think there's 125 nodes, because there isn't. But there's also another one where we can use distilled fuel. Now, let's say we're gonna have to start all the way over here. So basically, we take our oil out, we put water and make packaged water. That's the packaged water. Then we put that in the refinery to get heavy oil residue. Heavy oil residue plus packaged water, make packaged fuel. And then packaged fuel basically gets taken out, and then boom. So we have upped our power consumption from 12.5 to 15,000. That is crazy. We've added an extra 2,500 megawatts of power, which is a lot, but we've made the same thing. Now, is it useful? Well, if we go over here, we've brought that down. What was that before? 15,000 oil down to 3,750 oil. We've brought that down dramatically. Now, sure, we're gonna need about 10,000 water. That's a lot of water. That is a lot of water. But still, okay, still. Granted, this is an extreme, and this will last you for the rest of the game, but 10,000 water, there's freaking water all over the place. Dude, that's only like 83 water extractors? That's crazy. Now onto an interesting one, liquid biofuel. Now, it's basically solid biofuel and water, so it just waters down your solid biofuel, but we need about 8,000 cubic meters just to make our 100 megawatts of power. Now, I've divided this up into all the lovely little ones. So basically, the most extreme one, where's that? This one right here, making leaves, would be about 7,400 megawatts of power. That still beats out either one of those while still needing to produce less. And I think the most efficient one is all the way down here, yes, which would need about 6,000 megawatts of power. So yeah. So what's the difference between these? Well, it's how you turn the biomass in the end. So down here, if we had it, we would need 6,000 cubic meters of water for this with 120 alien organisms per minute. So there's no way we're getting that. There's no way we're getting the alien carcasses, but it's interesting to see it if we ever plugged it in. Definitely not getting the mycelia. The wood is a maybe. Leaves are a hell no. Like, as great as liquid biofuel is, it's not even close to being useful in terms of actually having as a power plant, because it's too unreliable. Now onto the coup de grace, the one that everybody seems to love, which is turbo fuel. This is usually how most people have their end game set up, because once you make this, what do you need else for? So we have the regular turbo fuel recipe, and then we had some altercations going down here. So let's see which one is the best. So this is the regular turbo fuel recipe. So that's basically fuel and compact coal. And then the way that I did that was just basically take the crude oil, turn it into fuel, and then combine that with the compact coal. Now, that will mean we need 3,000 cubic meters of turbo fuel to make 100 megawatts of power. Now, this will use about 11,000 megawatts of power, and in the back we can see that'll only need about maybe 5,000 crude oil, which is still a lot. I don't even know how many is on the entire map. And then about 2,400 sulfur and coal respectively. So that is quite a lot. Now, there's a big boy recipe down here, which does the same thing, where it's the refineries, the 8.8. This is used in the regular recipe for turbo fuel. Now, granted, we have increased, not by much, but we have increased our power consumption. We'll say about 1,200. We added an extra 1,000 megawatts of power for consumption, but check this out. If we go all the way to the end, right here, we're using about the same compact coal, but we dropped our crude oil dramatically. Now, how did we do this? This is a good question for that. So we have the miners, and the miners making the compact coal. Bam, that's the same everywhere. All right, then we have the oil extractor, which is going to basically take packaged water. So we're going to take water, we're going to package it. We're going to take our crude oil and turn that into heavy oil residue. Then we're going to take our heavy oil residue and packaged water to make packaged fuel. And then basically we're going to unpackage the fuel, combine it with that compact coal we made earlier, and boom. This way we drop our oil consumption dramatically to some reasonable levels. This is actually quite interesting, because if we go back over here, you can see like 1,300, that's not too much. I mean, that's almost like 600 lines of crude oil. Now, the sulfur and the coal, that is a lot. Yeah, but, you know, what are you going to do? Now, granted, there is an alternate recipe where you just take heavy oil residue and compact coal, and you make 30 turbo fuel. Hooray! Which means we still need the same amount and everything, so it's no problem. Now, to get that, I just took the crude oil, turned it into heavy oil residue, and bam, combined it with the compact coal. Now, the difference here is kind of interesting. So we need a little bit more coal and a little bit more sulfur, and a lot more crude oil if we compare it to this one. So we're going from 2,800 down to 13. So let's see. That's about, God, it's almost like double. Is that double? 26. Oh, that is more than double crude oil. Now, if we look at the original one that was up here, that was 5,000. Actually, let's kind of center this a little bit better. So if you look at this one, so this is about 5,000. Now, if we compare that to this one, that's amazing. By using the alternate recipe, we can go from this down to here, which is a little bit more coal and sulfur. But if we do that other method, yeah, that's so much better packaging, and, you know, because basically we're turning water into freaking, because we're basically turning water into fuel and everything, and that really helped. Although I don't think I actually put it here towards the end. Yeah, I forgot to put the water on this one, because this means we need about 3,500. We about 30 water extractors to make this work, which, gotta say, 30 water extractors ain't that much in the long run. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I know this video has been quite long, but there's still one more thing to take care of, and that is nuclear power. And as we can see here, this is only taken care of by the nuclear fuel rod, which is the only thing that can go in here. Well, until the new update, then we'll probably get some plutonium to throw in there. No, wait, shh, it is legend. So if we come all the way down here to the bottom, you can see what 100 fuel rods would do for us. But unfortunately, you can't really make 100 fuel rods. I mean, you could, but not consistently. So I was going to put all that stuff down there like I did before and go through each little node, but I had to separate it out a little bit differently and actually go through and pick and choose what I think would be the best recipes to use. So like for the encased uranium cells, I use the alternate because it's going to make more of the uranium into uranium cells. The nuclear fuel rod is the alternate recipe. So I just went through and tried to find what the best recipes were. Like I've used the alternate recipe for beacons and stuff because that'll give us more beacons, even though it is crystal oscillators and stuff like that. So I got everything taken care of, written down nice and good, and at the bottom we can actually see the totals for this. Now the nice thing about this is only one uranium node. So as you can see, if I scroll over here a little bit, that's 300 uranium per minute, which is one node fully clocked out, because that's literally all you can do for uranium. And that will get you 15.75 nuclear fuel rods per minute, making 78.75 nuclear power plants with a whopping 196 megawatts of power. And the best part is the power consumption for all these different items is only about 5,600 megawatts of power, which is insane when you really think about this, because look how many different items you have to make through this. I mean, granted, some of the worst ones, maybe the assemblers, 20 assemblers, but still, only 5,000 megawatts of power to make so much power. This is by far the best thing that you can make. Now, some of the issues are you have about 600 lines of water, not bad. Iron ore, copper ore, like nothing is over a full line. Like sulfur is pushing it at 600. But I mean, you can basically just get one of each, just come in there and be pretty good. Hell, you can find impure nodes too as well and use those as well. But you do see on some of these, like I use a regular crystal quartz one instead of the refined alternate recipe, because I just didn't want to use, like, there's no point in adding water to this and using refineries when I can use constructors to save space. So there are some things that I kind of just chose what I think the best one is. Like for the steel one, I'm using iron ore and compact coal. I mean, do you really need to make compact coal? No, not really. But, you know, actually, I could probably get rid of all the coal because that's the only thing that I need coal for, which is the 86 that's down here. So I could probably knock coal off. Like, if I go through this, yes, I can probably knock off certain things, but for right now, I thought this was the best recipe. I might take another look at it just to see, but other than that, I think it's pretty good. But guys, that's going to be it. I hope this helped. I thought this was informative. Like this kind of stuff, I love this kind of stuff because it's interesting to see which would be the best recipe. What are the extremes that you can build some of this stuff in? Like, is it even worth it to go crazy with coal or crazy with biomass burners or crazy with fuel generators or crazy with nuclear power plants for that matter? So it's all really cool to see some of this stuff come to head. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for today. Getting ready for some of the really interesting stuff in Update 4. Doing a lot of work, so the videos aren't coming out as fast. Sorry about that. But other than that, we're just having fun. Anyway, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.